This is Plan B, Episode 7 for May 21st, 2013. And welcome to Plan B, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show contemplating the future and present of Bitcoin, with insights for the novice, shop talk for the expert, and opinionated discussion for the interested observer of Bitcoin and related technologies. My name is Chris, and joining me every single week is my co-host, Drew.
Hello, how's it going?
Hey man, welcome to Episode 7.
Another big show, as always.
A huge show this week. Coming up, we're going to do a Q&A special. We're going to get some of the beginner questions that have come into the show answered. But we're also going to have a chat with Amir Taaki, I believe is how you say his last name. I'll get a definitive on that when we get him on the line. And talk to him about some of the things he's worked on and some of the things he's worked on in the past, like the Electrum Bitcoin wallet. And in the discussion segment, we're going to bring on Ben Morse from the Port Forward podcast to tell us about his adventures at the Bitcoin 2013 Future of Payments conference that went down this past weekend. So, Drew, biggest show ever, I think, potentially.
Yeah. We're still gaining steam. Come on.
That's right. We're just getting started. All right, well, why don't we kick things off with a voicemail, because we want to do a little feedback at the top of the show. And our first one came in just a couple of days ago.
Hey guys, love the show. I've been listening for a couple episodes now. I want to help a local merchant accept Bitcoin as payment for sandwiches. What's the easiest or best way to do that? I'll keep listening. Thanks.
Wow, combining two of our favorite things, Drew. Bitcoin
Well, it depends
sandwiches.
on the kind of sandwich.
That's true. He didn't say where he was located, but I'm going to guess he's in the U.S. And I would say probably, BitPay? Does that came to your mind?
That was the first thing that I thought of.
Yeah.
Because it allows them to take Bitcoins as Bitcoins or convert the Bitcoins at the time of purchase to regular currency. So
right.
It's easy for people to adopt.
They just need to be able to display the website or have a smartphone or tablet that could bring it up. And then you just need to have a smartphone or tablet that has a wallet on there. And they offer a couple of different services. Coinbase is another one that he could check out. Coinbase will do some merchant stuff, so definitely check that out. But I would probably say right now the one that's got a lot of stink behind it, and they just got $5 million cash, although Coinbase just got some cash too, is BitPay. And I've been experimenting with both, so right now for the show, I'm using Coinbase because they allow, here, push a button, right? And you push this button, and then boom, now you've got donation buttons, and you can set your own custom amount, and it's really nice. But BitPay, one of the cool things that BitPay does is they appear to offer this sort of intermediary service where you can even do Amazon fulfillment, where you can have like an Amazon store on your website and you can accept Bitcoins for payments of those items. So whereas Coinbase is sort of maybe a little more basic.
Linear?
Yeah. BitPay is offering a whole range of payment conversion services. It's more of a full-fledged payment gateway, whereas Coinbase is, for a sandwich, it's definitely going to get the job done. Correct,
yes.
Right? And for somebody like me who wants to take a donation on a website, Coinbase gets the job done. Although I'm experimenting with BitPay too. Both good solutions. And you know what? Good for you. Combining Bitcoin advocacy and sandwiches is always an okay thing in our book. All right. Well, I think his name's pronounced Roland. He emailed in, and he's coming in from the Lost Coins discussion that we had. Let me get his email up on the screen. The Lost Coins discussion that we had, I think it was last week. He says there's really no way you can ever see the difference between a lost coin and hoarded coins. So the value of coins can only be related to the number of transactions and number of spent coins. If there are a lot of transactions, the value goes down and prices go up. If everybody is hoarding, or a lot of coins get lost, the value goes up and the prices go down. He even includes a little Wikipedia link here, which you guys can check out to kind of give you some math of it. He says, so when there is a lot of hoarding, then the prices will end up going down. So consumers aren't necessarily hurt by this. And it's interesting, there was an article that came out of the Bitcoin 2013 Future of Payments conference, and this writer kind of focused in on this point and said, I asked these guys that are taking payments for their goods with Bitcoin, I said, well, aren't you worried about the deflationary aspect, or aren't you worried about hoarding? And their response is, well, we just respond by the market pressure by either lowering the price, so when the price of Bitcoin goes up, we'll adjust our prices, and then people spend. But he says they're also observing sort of the wealth effect, and this is something you guys can look up, where people often get more generous when they spend. And I've noticed that. We've gotten some donations in Bitcoin, which have been generous. And when you're on the Bitcoin subreddit, people will tip you for good content in the subreddit, just in the comments section. So there is a certain like generosity mode that some people go into. But he says the price of goods and services will go up as S goes up, or, in this case, hoarding. Also, if the number of goods and services offered in the market increases, the price of those goods and services will go down. Keep up the good work. And he is in Flanders. Interesting thoughts there. And he included the Wikipedia link if you guys are more interested in that. So, Drew, I wanted to say a special thank you to our iTunes users out there. They've been rating and commenting on the show and helping us keep visibility in the iTunes store, so I really appreciate that. And if you haven't yet rated or commented on the Plan B iTunes store entry, I know not all of you love iTunes, but if you have it installed, you could do us a favor, because what that does is that increases our discoverability in the iTunes store. And the nice thing about that is a lot of people out there right now are looking for more information about Bitcoin, but they just don't know where to get it. I hear this a lot. And by helping us stay in those rankings in iTunes, people discover our show. But I'm going to give Ben a call. Ben, I have had the pleasure to talk to Ben. He's from the Port Forward podcast, and he's been on our show, Coda Radio, a couple of times. Hey, Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. What's up? How's it going?
Hey, man, so you went to the Bitcoin 2013 Future of Payments conference this weekend,
Future, huh? I did. It was a crazy story because I was up really late Thursday night, so Friday morning at 1 a.m., and I heard Plan B podcast, and you guys talked about the show, and I had no idea that the conference was even going on.
Oh, really?
Okay? So I tweeted you on Twitter, and I said, I hate you, Chris, for telling me about it, but it's too expensive because I can't go. Okay?
Right.
And so within 2 hours, Ralph the Ninja gave me 1.5 Bitcoins to fund me.
That was great. And I guess he was just monitoring the Twitter stream, right?
Yeah, it was crazy, okay? And then at that point, I just started holding out my hand and saying, everybody, please fund me to this conference, because I said, well, if one guy will do it, someone else will do it, right? So at Freedom Factory gave me another 0.25 Bitcoins. So that was sort of the donations I got. And then actually I ended up hooking up with Cash Hill. I ended up driving her from San Francisco all the way to San Jose.
Right. Cashmere Hill, the Forbes writer.
Exactly. And she gave me another half a Bitcoin.
What do you and Cashmere Hill talk about on the way to the Bitcoin conference?
Mostly we talked about you. I'm not going to lie. In your second here.
Hey. Oh, good things.
No, of course. We talked about all kinds of things. I actually found out that she's, she does, privacy and stuff reporting for Forbes.
Yeah.
She's also into the drone scene, so she might like the Unfiltered show. I don't know.
Oh, snaps. Didn't know. Yeah, maybe I'll have to get her on for that.
Yeah, we talked a lot about things. We talked about how she couldn't get coffee. I tried to get some ideas from her about the hackathon because she ran into all these different problems during her 1 week, So I was thinking, what pain points can I solve with an application or something like that? So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Well, that is really neat. And so you went down there. Did you go for the whole thing?
I went for the whole thing. Just to finish up the tally, one guy I drove back, I forgot his name, but he gave me a whole Bitcoin. So in total, I totaled up at 3.25 Bitcoins, which funded my entire trip and gas.
That's awesome.
So it's pretty awesome. So yeah, I went the whole time. The first day, the Winklevi twins were up on stage, and they gave a talk. And it was a pretty lame talk. They gave a talk as if no one knew what Bitcoin was, or people were kind of skeptical about it. But if you're at the conference, everybody already loves Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was okay.
Yeah.
I actually got to meet them later, which was pretty cool too. But it was a really big conference. I think my favorite thing was the ATM. There was actually two ATMs, but the coolest one was from Lamassu, and I dropped $100 in there, and that was pretty cool. And it was basically the fastest and easiest way I had gotten Bitcoin in my whole life. So that was really nice.
And it worked by you. So you put the money in, and then you put your phone in kind of a cutout slot they had where they had a QR scanner in there. Mm-hmm. Was that for privacy? Did you ask them about that?
No, I think it was. I didn't ask them about that. It was just like a glass window, and then the camera had like a 3 inches for focal, focusing or whatever.
And it was just at current market value, huh? And you just had the Bitcoin.
Yeah, and then the operator of the ATM can set the price you take on top, and then that's just what it shows up on the screen. Is the percentage is included all the way in there. So. Is the rate as far as the transaction rate, right? The merchant already gets their cut.
Yeah.
So you don't even get to see what the merchant's taking their cut. You just get to see the value that you're going to get it at. So,
I heard I didn't hear a lot from the conference. One of the things I heard about is that Ripple, pardon the pun, made some waves. Did you see much from the Ripple project or hear anything about that?
I did see Ripple. I did see them. I didn't hear much anything specifically about that what they were doing. I saw there was a lot of really cool places, a lot of cool booths that were set up. There was Coinbase, there was BitPay, BitInstant. There was CoinLab, which is a Bitcoin incubator for startups, which was pretty cool. And there was also the Bitcoin Fund, which is a hedge fund where you can buy in with cash and manage Bitcoins. And the minimum buy-in was $100,000. So they were big players there.
I also heard that there was people with booths where they just kind of had cash out on the floor and just right there they were just doing in-person trades. You put the cash down and you get a Bitcoin and they would transfer to you. Did you see any of that going on?
No, that sounded pretty cool though.
Oh,
I think the ATMs, I think they ran $75,000 through the ATM. So I mean, that's like a lot of transactions that people were really getting into Bitcoin.
So tell me about the Butterfly Labs booth, because I have one on pre-order.
I got one too. Yeah, the labs was there. They had a wafer out. They had the little Android app there mining. It was really cool. If you go to the link in the show notes, you can see the picture that I took. They have both one of the small units, and then also I think they have a 50 gigahash unit right there as well.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
All right. So the other thing I heard is that despite the fact that DHS just recently seized the Mt. Gox Shell Corporation account here in the U.S., not many people were even talking about Gox.
No, nobody really was talking about it. I mean, Gox couldn't make it because they were dealing with their legal stuff. But I mean, everybody was really focusing on like new ideas and what we can do. And it's really interesting because the financial community has really like gotten the idea.
Yeah.
And so they're basically, piling tons and tons of money for people that have good ideas. So everybody is really, really excited about the space, and it's about to blow up. Now, you could look at that as a bad thing because you could say, well, the financial community is going to try to regulate it or going to try to do, the usual thing that they do. But I mean, it's good that it's valid now that Bitcoin, in my opinion, we've hit critical mass, Maybe that's not true, but that's what everybody seems to think, right? So we're kind of on our way.
Did you get the sense there was a lot more suits there than you would expect, or what was your sense of that?
It was probably 50-50, but there were a lot of suits. There was 3 tracks, for the conference talks, and one was technology, and one was business, and one was financial, like regulations or whatever. So according to the talks, 2 out of 3 were for the suits and 1 was for the nerds. But in general, it was about 50-50 as far as the breakdown, right? So, yeah.
I've heard reports about 1,000, 1,100 people. Is that the sense you got?
Yeah, that was really good. I wanted to tell you a quick little story. I was sitting at a table with some people I'd met, and this guy came up and he said, "Hey, do you guys want to buy some Bitcoins?" And we kind of looked at him like kind of weird, like who are you? Like this seems really sketchy, right? And then someone said, "Well, why are you doing this?" And he said, "Oh, I don't have any money. I'm just trying to get money here. I just need some cash." And everybody at the table then said, "Oh yeah, let's do it." Like their opinion flipped immediately. So because the community is really helpful about each other, if you just say, "Listen, I need some help. This is what I need," the community will come and sponsor you or come to your aid. It was really cool.
That is really cool. And it's still at that point, it seems like, where it's small enough where you actually get to meet people. You actually get a sense for what the people behind some of these projects. Anything surprise you?
I don't know. Well, yeah. Okay. One thing surprised me. So there was a hackathon which I actually entered into, and the winner of the hackathon wasn't a very technical project. It was more of like a slide deck, like you would see it on an investor presentation. So they kind of went up there and they pitched their idea, and all the panel loved it, and they said, "Okay, you win the hackathon." And it was more of like a vision, like, "Oh, let's have this really great financial. How can we make all this money on Bitcoin?" As opposed to a real hackathon, in my opinion, which is focused on like, this is a cool technical trick, or you did something really cool here in 24 hours or whatever. Yeah.
Did you get a chance to see any of the hardware wallets?
I did. There was a few hardware wallets I got to see. I think it's Butterfly Labs has a little square one.
Yeah, of course, Butterfly Labs has a concept device that we can all gawk at, right?
There was another one I didn't get to see in person, but I saw someone wearing it. It was a necklace that had a big Bitcoin on it, and it looked like some sort of hardware. It would look like you were like your gangster gold wrap, like a gangster wrap necklace. And I guess that was a Bitcoin wallet as well. I think it was called the Foundry, or I don't remember the name, but there was these guys that were doing an offline wallet where in order to make transactions, you physically carried the transaction either by hand or on a USB stick on and off of this offline computer. So if you want to so kind of
like a vault almost.
It is like a vault. So you walk it over and you plug it in and you make your transactions. So
actually, that kind of makes a lot of sense if you are somebody that has maybe a few million in Bitcoin.
Right, exactly. You just have this laptop that's offline all the time, and it signs all your transactions with your private key, and you're ready to go.
Did you see anything there that you think we're going to see come to market really soon that we're all going to be talking about?
I think the Bitcoin ATMs are going to be pretty cool. The thing is that the legality isn't exactly established. So the sellers basically said that it's up to the person that buys the ATM and operates it to deal with the legality issues. I would love to see one in my personal town. I don't know if it would be a good investment for me, but I mean, I definitely thought about buying one.
What are the prices?
So, they are $5,000 in singles and $4,000 if you buy them in bulk.
If I was just a crazy person, though, I could buy a $5,000 ATM for my house.
Yes.
I mean, just kind of want to do that.
Right? I mean, why not?
I mean, I would never actually have the money to just blow like that. But if I did, I mean, I love the idea of like, hey, I feel like a Bitcoin right now. Although I think they need to change them from ATMs to vending machines, because then I think that changes a lot of the legal framework that they're underneath. So I think they've kind of made a mistake by getting ATM out there.
So your co-host, is it Chase or is it Drew? I forgot his name.
He's doing it again.
It's Drew. It's Drew.
Do you have any input, Drew? You've been kind of quiet this whole time.
No, I know. Well, of course, he's great at this, so he's tearing it up.
I do kind of monopolize. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay.
Drew, yeah. What do you think? Anything you wondered would happen at the conference or anything like that?
I did have something, but I forgot. So go ahead.
That's all right. Ben, are you going to be talking more about this on your show, the Port Forward podcast?
I will have a couple exclusive interviews with some hackers and stuff like that that I met with. It's called the Port Forward podcast. One last thing, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to tell you about my hackathon entry, which ended up losing, but that's okay.
Oh, sure.
So it's called Get Bitcoin, and the idea is that if you have an open source repo and you want to incentivize people to work on your project, you put a Bitcoin wallet associated with it and put a couple Bitcoins in there, and then the software will allow you to pay out for commits to the code that you feel are valuable.
Wow.
And then you can kind of add incentivize people, like to say if you commit every month, the longer a run of months you commit in a row will increase your payout, and you get a bonus for a first time commit and all these kind of ideas.
So it's like the Reddit Bitcoin tip bot, only on steroids applied to GitHub.
Exactly.
That's
a great idea.
You should move forward with that, Ben, regardless.
I definitely am thinking moving forward with it.
I mean, that could really incentivize open source project development. And then, even if it just initially in the Bitcoin community, it might then, spread out from there. So that's awesome, dude.
Yeah. We could even apply it to the Bitcoin client to get better work there. So it's kind of like a dog food effect there anyways. So
totally. Yeah, absolutely. Well, go check out portforwardpodcast.com to catch Ben's interviews, and also we'll have a link in the show notes to his Imager gallery that he posted from his snaps at the conference. Ben, man, thanks for coming on the show and telling us about it.
Great, thanks. Talk to you guys soon.
All right, have a good one.
All right, bye-bye.
And I wish I could have gone. Maybe next year, Drew. Maybe next year we'll be able to go to that. We could do a show live there.
I know, like do some like you did with the Linux Fest Northwest.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I grew up in California, so pretty close to that area, so we might as well do it.
Well, RT has a brand new show called Prime Interest with a lovely and talented host who I've been interacting with on Twitter just recently. And they did an interview with the founder of or the co-founder of BitInstant. And his name is, let me see here. Let's see here. His name is, he's also the CEO, Charlie Shrem. And he's kind of an interesting character. And I thought while we're on the topic of the Bitcoin conference, since she got this interview, I'll link to her full interview. It was about 12, 13 minutes long. I'm going to play just a quick snip from it just to give you a little more information about BitInstant.
Now today we're going to feature one of the youngest CEOs at the conference. He's one of the most successful though. His name's Charlie Shrem, and he is the co-founder and CEO of BitInstant, which provides retail access to Bitcoins as a registered money transfer agent. He's 23 years old, and he wears a ring with his Bitcoin wallet on it. They call him Four-Finger Charlie because if you chopped it off, you could get all his money. The first question I asked Charlie was just to provide a little bit of background on what BitInstant is and what it does, and here's his comments.
BitInstant is the company that allows anyone to buy Bitcoin locally. So if you have a 7-Eleven, a Walmart, a CVS, Duane Reade, at your local location, you can go into these places and actually buy Bitcoin, up to $2,000 worth every day. At the same time, if you have Bitcoin and you need for some reason to transfer back into dollars or any currency, we can put money into your bank account within 30 minutes. So we're servicing the under $10,000 customer where most people who are buying Bitcoin think that they need to go to these large exchanges and open up accounts and put trading orders in. You don't need to do that. When you go to Europe and you buy euros, you're either using your ATM card or you're going to one of these TravelX or change places to do that. And that's what BitInstant is poised to be.
And how widespread is BitInstant?
In the US, we're in 700,000 locations, but globally, we're in 11 different countries. So you can buy Bitcoin at any post office or bank in Brazil, any airport or bank in Russia. We're in the Caribbean islands, we're in Ukraine, we're in most of the Eastern European countries, and we are going to be in Australia and the UK by the end of the month.
And you also just have very exciting news that you're releasing. The Winklevoss Capital has funded you a very large sum of money. I think it was at $1.5 million.
Yep, Cameron and Tyler are great guys. I met them in Ibiza, actually, gave them my lounge chair, and that's how it all got started. One of our first investors, David Azar, was there as well, and he kind of pitched them on this whole thing where he's been in the money service business for over 10 years. So he's like a veteran of the banking world. And he came and said, wow, this Bitcoin thing is really going to overturn the whole financial infrastructure. And he pitched them on it, and he introduced them to me. They're like, yeah, you have to meet this Charlie guy, board genius, blah, blah, blah. And we all met, and it was love at first sight. We all got together and started building the company. They actually invested, I would say like 6 months ago. We just recently announced it. We wanted to make sure that everything was good and that we had all our ducks in a row. At the time, I was running the company out of my basement. We had 3 employees. It was a joke. And they picked me up and they said, Charlie, you have to make this thing. Now we're 16 employees, 16 team members. We're going to be 18 people by the end of the month. We're moving to a new Soho office as well in a few weeks. We have finally money transmitter licensing in over 30 states. And federal license as well with FinCEN. So we're really pushed a lot and did really good things.
He went on to talk about how difficult the regulation situation is in the United States and what a minefield it is. And he also,
I can't even imagine.
I know.
Can you imagine trying to get started in something like this?
Instead, they've got legit licenses in 36 states, something like that. That's awesome. And I think it's also interesting that the twins invested in them several months ago, but they only announced it now. That way they could kind of get their crap all together. And I was just demoing it in the video version for the live stream folks, but BitInstant is going to be rolling out a brand new website. They demoed it at the Bitcoin conference, and then the URL leaked online so everybody could go look at it. It's new.bitinstant.com. So here's the new version if you're watching the video stream, and I'll load up the old version, and I'll tell you, the new version looks considerably more legit than the old version. As somebody who's used BitInstant before, and I've lost money, and I've also not lost money. I've used BitInstant several times. But the biggest advantage they offer is this local cash deposit. And they offer, in my small little hick town, 40, 60 minutes north of Seattle, maybe 65 minutes north of Seattle, there's like 7 locations for me to choose from that I can go to within 5 minutes of my house to make cash deposits into Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I'm thinking about, I might have to do this instead of that local Bitcoin thing that we were talking about pre-show.
Well, and Charlie said something, other than also sounding like they're trying to do everything by the legit and by the book, is he said that they're targeting the sub $10,000 transaction customer. You know, they're just targeting people who want to move a few $100 in and out of Bitcoin. And that's me.
Definitely. Yeah, it must be most people too.
I would think,
right?
Yeah. And Trade Hill is going to focus on the high-end market, and well, let's not talk about Mt. Gox. They just upset me too much. So yeah, the wiki loves, whatever, the twins, the Facebook, the guys,
those guys,
the handsome twins. Let's just call them the handsome twins.
Oh yeah.
They along with David Azar are investing in BitInstant. BitInstant is a New York-based startup, and like you heard Charlie say, they're going to go to 16 employees. Which is pretty impressive for a 23-year-old, although he really actually does seem to have his stuff together. I've seen him in a couple of other interviews as well. So there you go, folks. We have a bunch more links on the Bitcoin 2013 conference, but thanks to Ben, that was a lot of the stuff that grabbed our attention. I guess Ben touched on this. The ATMs were big. The CBC did a piece on ATMs for Bitcoins.
The world's first ever Bitcoin ATM is coming to Silicon Valley. Our own Jane Wells has just sat down with the inventors of the ATM, which I'm imagining, Jane, kind of works the opposite way to most ATMs.
Yeah, well, and this one is small. It kind of looks like an old Apple computer. But this morning, Bart Chilton of the Commodities Futures Trading Commission said about Bitcoins, quote, "They don't exist. and I didn't want to regulate them. I didn't want to put the government stamp of approval. That's just fine with the Harvey brothers, who will debut the Lamassu Bitcoin ATM tomorrow in Silicon Valley. All you need is a free app setting up a Bitcoin account and some cash.
Well, you press the start button. There are 3 steps. You just show the machine your QR code. It got it.
I have $5.
0.0429 Bitcoin is what you get for your $5.
Wow. Yeah, not much. Josh and Zach Harvey say they're already getting some nibbles to buy the ATMs for $5,000 a piece. Unlike some competitors also racing to market, they won't license the ATMs, just sell them. It will be the buyer's responsibility for any potential future regulatory issues.
This isn't really an ATM, you know. It's not a way for you to talk to your bank. You could think of it more of as a vending machine, in a way. You know, you put in dollar bills, you get a chocolate bar. Here you're putting in dollar bills and you're getting a digital currency.
But with the Feds freezing accounts of the largest Bitcoin exchange, Mt. Gox, for allegedly running an unlicensed money transfer operation, could demand vanish before the ATMs even come to market.
I know that there are a lot of startups coming up right now that are doing everything by the book. So I do think that there will still be a lot of customers for this amazing technology that's emerging that a lot of people are excited about.
Well, everybody, of course, who's interested in Bitcoins wants to be outside the banking system often. Finally, you know, a lot of controversy, but these guys are putting the Bitcoins where their wallets are. I asked them how much of their net worth is tied up in the volatile currency.
Most of it.
Right. Well, you know, we might not have that much net worth, but what we have is...
I was thinking the same thing.
Maybe they will have more. They plan to have the first ATMs ready by summer and say the obit on Bitcoins has been written before, but they're not dead yet. Simon and David?
Okay, Simon and David. You know, Louis BSAS in the chat room has brought up this thread on Bitcoin Talk. It's 350 disastrously long pages of people who are having issues with BitInstant, and you know, I count myself among them. I think I lost about $300 through BitInstant. Now, this is one of these things that's really difficult to know all the circumstances, especially on stuff like this. And I've talked about my troubles with BitInstant before in earlier Plan B episodes, 1 or 2 actually. I think I covered that and the issues I had with the way they handled that stuff. I will say this now: their new site handles a lot of this infrastructure stuff. I'm not yet convinced, although I haven't dug into it seriously. You'd think with a $300 burn I would, but it seems potentially like they were just really overwhelmed. Because this was happening, the bulk of that was happening when Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin was really skyrocketing.
Yeah, so a bunch of people were trying to get in really quickly.
Yeah, and
overwhelmed their support staff.
BitInstant was like the primary method. 30% of the Bitcoin
that's a crazy number.
Purchase transactions were through BitInstant during that time. I don't know. So, you know, our coverage of BitInstant here on the show is not necessarily an endorsement, but they're a company I'm watching because I think both, you know, you and I, Drew, we feel like soon as these walls around getting money into Bitcoin drop, it's going to be nuts.
Oh, yeah, because the walls that's what's stopping everybody from getting in, pretty much, right?
Yeah,
it's a huge. That's why I haven't bought in Bitcoins with actual money in years. So, I mean, there you go, right?
Yeah. I think it's one of those things where things like Coinbase and BitInstant make it super easy. I mean, I can just go down to my 7-Eleven and I can buy Bitcoin with BitInstant.
Yeah, the day that you can go online and just, you know, put your credit card in or whatever, or make a Amazon purchase or something like that and get some Bitcoins, I'm there because, you know, I don't want to leave the house. So.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, exactly.
That's the final step.
All right, Drew, are you just about ready to get Amir on here?
Yeah, sir.
Okay, so I'm gonna call him up here on Skype in just a second. He's over in the UK, so it's past his bedtime. Actually, I don't think it is past his bedtime. But you know, I was just looking over Amir's biography on Wikipedia here, and it says that in 2009 and 2010 he made his living as a professional poker player. Okay, and then his experience in online gambling is actually what kind of led him to Bitcoin in the first place. So there you go. So we're about to talk to Amir, and this guy, he's responsible for a ton of the great work on the Electrum wallet, which is my personal favorite Bitcoin wallet, and he's involved right now in some infrastructure code that is going to change the landscape of Bitcoin applications and hosted Bitcoin solutions on servers. And as soon as we started talking to Amir, man, he just jumped right into it. So first we'll get into the technical stuff, and then we're going to zoom out and talk about some really interesting big picture stuff. Buckle up.
So from project perspective, I made like the first Bitcoin, the UK Bitcoin exchange, which we were like running for a long time, and he's doing quite a bit of volume and was successful and everything before we had to shut it down because the regulatory agency here suddenly changed their tone, and we were getting like a lot of pressure from banks.
Yeah.
Then also, I also like made the last 2 Bitcoin conferences. Well, not the one that just passed, but I made the first one in Prague called Bit Groups, and I made the second one in London, which is Bitcoin 2012. And then also I made a bunch of other Bitcoin projects. And then also I was involved in this Bitcoinica scandal in some way, but that's a different, longer story. But from a development perspective, I worked a bit on this client called Electrum, which is this. I rewrote the entire back end, and also spent a few months where I was studying the UI and how people use Bitcoin. I redesigned that one. So it's the picture of the Bitcoin client that's there on Wikipedia for Bitcoin. And then also I've developed the only full re-implementation of the Bitcoin standard. So that means like including block validation, scripting system, the networking, the crypto stuff, the memory pool, the transaction memory pool, the protocol, all of that, the serialization, the elliptic curve. And that's taken me like 2 years. And I come from a background which is, so I was working on video games in these like projects where they had like millions of lines of code with dozens of developers. So when I come to software, I come from it very much in a perspective of maintainability and readability. So I think a lot about how can people keep using this software. And because I've spent a lot of time working on game engines, I also have a lot of experience in API design. So I came to this Bitcoin deal like a few years ago, and I was like playing around with the source code. We made Python bindings for it. I started to make a bunch of different extensions and more functionality. We quickly started to get against roadblocks because of the design of this huge monolithic code base. So it's one big gigantic piece of code. And if you want to interact with it, you have to interact with it for predefined JSON RPC interface. So you can't really delve deep into the internals. As soon as you start going into the internals of Bitcoin and changing things about, other things start to break because it's not designed for that. So the way like I've designed like Libbitcoin is I'm really against frameworks, because I think a framework is a program which is already made and it has a bunch of stubs, and you just go and fill in those stubs and that's it. I think it shoehorns you into one way of developing things, and I think that's really bad for system level software. So Libbitcoin is like a set of classes and utilities and functions, and there's all these different components that you can chain together to build bigger pieces of Bitcoin software.
So Libbitcoin is something you've been working on for a long time, and at first it sounds like something that's pretty simple, but I think Libbitcoin is sort of, it's going to enable a whole new generation of application developers who maybe don't understand the fundamentals of Bitcoin, right? But they could use Libbitcoin to create a Bitcoin client to integrate Bitcoin functionalities into their application, correct?
Yeah, that's what I really want to get at. It's like a proper Bitcoin ecosystem, which you start at the top and you can like interact with Bitcoin, but then if you need something more, or you're just interested to go down, you can keep delving deeper and deeper and deeper. And at each level there's concise, like strict design of API and functionality. So Libbitcoin is the core, but it's a core of a whole ecosystem of infrastructure that I'm really focused on. So more specifically with Libbitcoin is purely C++ library, and it's very much focused around asynchronous non-blocking. And also I said that it's a toolkit, it's not a framework. You never ever, so one of the things I use is this concept of dependency injection. Now, if you have let's say you have a class like, I don't know, a tiger class, and a tiger has a head, it has legs, and it has a heart and a tail. and if the tiger class needs a head class or a leg class or a tail class, the usual way that a lot of software does this is the Tiger class instantiates those objects it needs. But what I use with Libbitcoin is instead you pass in the dependencies in the constructor. So all throughout the library, there are many different things that depend on the blockchain. For instance, a transaction memory pool needs to use the blockchain to actually validate the transactions before including it into the memory pool.
You
pass. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So you pass the blockchain into the constructor of the transaction pool, but there are different blockchain backends. There might be a Level DB one, a Berkeley DB one. I used to have a PostgreSQL one, but that's no longer maintained. So that's dependency injection. That means you can swap in and out different components and build different combinations as you want. The second thing is the way to do asynchronous non-blocking is that every function that you call returns immediately. So if I do a store or I do a fetch operation, that returns immediately, but I pass to it a completion handler. So when that operation goes off in there, it finishes, and once it's done, it calls your completion handler. This is called the proactor pattern. It's different from the reactor pattern. The reactor pattern is you have your core that's running, and when the operation is ready to be executed, it wakes up, it notifies the user, and the user initiates the operation and then returns. And while the user is initiating that operation, it's blocking that thread of control. A proactor, by contrast, actually goes and initiates the operation in the core, and then calls the completion handler once it's finished. I've done a talk on this. If you go to youtube.com and you search for Amir Taaki async Bitcoin.
Yep, we'll have it linked in the show notes.
Okay, cool. And yeah, that will explain a lot of the concepts. Another one is this concept of different thread pools. So each different service, so let's say you have a blockchain service and a network service. Now, the blockchain service will be doing a lot of disk operations, and you don't want that blocking the network operations. But you also, so a classic way might be like to run it in more threads, right? But we already said that there's no blocking. So you have these two thread contexts, and you don't want to block each other.
Is this important for scale purposes, like on a server? So
yes, scalability. Yeah, exactly. Like, so if I instantiate a service, so let's say I instantiate a handshake service, the first argument to every constructor for every service in Libbitcoin is the thread pool object, and that's where any operation that you call, like the fetch or the store or the send or whatever operation you're executing on the service, will get sent as a packet of work to be done to that thread pool, and that thread pool will, when it's ready, wake up, take that piece of work to be done off the queue, execute it, and then call the completion handler. So that way, I can separate the different contexts along different lines of functionality. So the blockchain is doing disk operations, and you typically don't want to have more than one thread of control for disk operations, because then the head of the disk is moving around a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it's not so much true nowadays with
SSDs.
With SSDs, yeah, but that's how it was in the past. And then the networking stuff, you want its own thread context. And maybe you have different networking operations, but you want them all to share the same thread pool. So you put them all, make them all share that thread pool, and then maybe one's for actually doing like your day-to-day services. So you can really think logically. And okay, so here's the thing. So then suddenly you decide, okay, I've got for instance the hosts. So the thing that's actually storing all the list of Bitcoin node addresses, and I want to make that scale upwards somehow. Well, you can just throw more threads at it by increasing the number of threads in the thread pool that one is using.
Let me ask you a question.
Let's
hit pause here so that we can zoom out for because that's pretty technical, and that's cool, and that's extremely fascinating and sounds actually genius, to be honest with you. I want to ask you something though, because I have a sense that part of the motivation behind Libbitcoin, although what you've touched on from a technical aspect is awesome, it seems like what you're really trying to, and now I could be completely wrong, Amir, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're trying to open up the field to add more Bitcoin clients and sort of break the dominance of the Bitcoin QT mainline client. Am I accurate in that statement? Is that part of your motivation here?
But also, like, I think right now there's a lot of focus on, like, people, like, trying to make the blockchain work on the desktop.
Right.
And I think that's a mistake.
Right, they're worried about the size of the blockchain.
Yeah, I think there needs to be more focus on the server. And also developers...
This is the idea behind Electrum, right? The blockchain's hosted on a group of servers.
Yeah, so also I think the developers, like, they need to have like proper tools as well to start building different kinds of Bitcoin applications, like not just the one thing that we all imagine, like a Bitcoin node, but other kinds of things like network statistical tools or different kinds of utilities for the command line. If you look at, there's a project I made called Vertex, SUBVERTX.
We'll have a link to the show notes.
There's a Bitcoin Talk forum thread, and it was only a prototype, but the whole point is that you have a bunch of different tools that can be chained together to, like, do all kinds of different Bitcoin functionality. For instance, there's a tool called Priv, and what that does is it generates private keys, allows you to sign data, hash digest using that, to verify hash digest, or to find the Bitcoin address associated with that private key that you generated. There's another tool called MKTX, and what you can do is you can create a signed transaction by piping in that private key, and you can also broadcast the transaction to the network. So what that means, you can chain those two commands together, and you can create offline transactions. But then maybe you want to, if you decide that you wanted to use, I don't know, deterministic wallets, you can use a different tool, and you can chain that with the MKTX, and you've suddenly got deterministic wallets combined with offline transactions. Or I don't know, maybe you want to play around with the blockchain, so you could have some tools to manipulate, to import data from one blockchain database into a different format blockchain database by loading different backends. And the whole point is like empowers admins to create all different kinds of, like, to really, like, interact with Bitcoin on the core deep level without having to be a programmer. And that's what I mean about focusing about Bitcoin on the server space.
And you've also, when you talk about the usability of Bitcoin and kind of taking a step back and looking at it, I know one of the things you're also interested in is sort of splitting out the wallet aspect of Bitcoin into its own separate.
Yeah.
Right. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've also made is, so using Libbitcoin, I created, I have this full node, and the full node, if you go to libbitcoin.dime.org and you click on the tutorial and you scroll down to the section called full node, you'll see there's a full node implementation, and that's only like 300 lines of code, not a lot of code. Mostly it's just creating all the different objects and chaining them together. Really simple stuff.
Yeah.
But then, so then I took that and I bolted onto it an Apache Thrift service. So Apache Thrift is like this library where you define some kind of interface, and then the client can connect to that server and execute methods remotely. So the whole point is we can expose all of the methods of Libbitcoin via this Apache Thrift server, so people can connect to this full Bitcoin node, and they can modify the node while it's running, execute whatever functions, really, like, play around with it, like fetch any piece of data that they need from the blockchain, and then also that I put 0MQ, so that, you know, new blocks that come in get published down the 0MQ channel, and unconfirmed but validated transactions also get sent down a different channel. And this is available. I haven't documented it yet. I'm still getting to that stage, but it's working now, and I've been testing it. It's github.com/genjix/query, and yeah, the whole point is that even if you think you should store the blockchain locally on your server, store it on your server. But I think that it's a mistake to be putting the wallet as part of the blockchain. The blockchain should be something that's user-side. So, for instance, you have one blockchain daemon running on your computer, but then in user space, you have your wallet. So you can have lots of different users all interacting with this blockchain server on the same computer, and that's good for security purposes. Because it means that this valuable piece of data, your wallet, is being sandboxed off away from this daemon, and you can have many different many different user accounts, all with different levels of permissions, using proper Linux utilities to set policies or whatever. And that really integrates much better with the Unix environment and the philosophy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing about Libbitcoin, so then, and this is all in Python, this query layer. So I said so Libbitcoin, so there's this principle called keep it simple, stupid. But that principle, it depends what you mean by simple. So in software development, there is, simple from an implementation perspective, sure. But that means maybe not so simple from the person who's using that implementation. But then there's also simple from a user perspective, but the implementation is doing a lot underneath to make it simple on top. And I think with system-level software, it should be implementation simple, but then application software should be user simple. And the way the way you do this is you have your backend, and the application software is simply providing a layer on top of that backend to add that simplicity. It's the way the software should be designed, I think. So yeah, I agree. I said I've got this Libbitcoin, mm-hmm. And that is, I try to keep the implementation as simple as possible. I don't provide methods that duplicate functionality.
How's the response been to Libbitcoin? I noticed some traction with the Debian project. Have you seen other people showing interest in Libbitcoin?
Yeah, I today posted on the Reddit, and everyone was saying. Let me read some of the comments one sec.
Oh yeah, on the Bitcoin subreddit.
Yeah, the Bitcoin subreddit, and people were saying, nice work, good on you. Wow, I love good C++. Awesome. Why are you not being paid for this?
Well, so Webby Wizard in our IRC chat room, Amir, asked a very good question.
Thank you for this beautiful piece of code.
I understand that. You live in what I think most people would consider potentially difficult arrangements. You have really committed yourself to this. You're not, as far as I know, making any money necessarily off this stuff. Why are you doing it?
I've been working in open source for over 10 years, and when I look at these tools like the internet, I see this amazing tool that's overthrown totalitarian regimes or gets grassroots candidates elected, proper tool that changed the social landscape of society. And technology is a really powerful thing. And when you have such an amazing skill, that if you waste it, just coding proprietary apps that go into some corporate black hole, you're an idiot. Because the people that made the internet, they embedded their ethics and their morals, and that's why it's such powerful stuff. And if you have this, it's your responsibility if you have this skill to carry on their torch, to carry on their legacy. I would actually feel bad, if I woke up 10 years later and it's what have I done with my life? I just wasted it. Doing nothing. And Bitcoin for me is really interesting piece of software. I love it. I think it's great.
It has the potential to change lives.
Yeah, it's really interesting application of all these different concepts. Mm-hmm. One of the most interesting things I've seen in years. Really. And I think the personal computing revolution of the 70s, there was a lot of cool projects, a lot of pioneers. One guy was Lee Felsenstein, and he made community memory, and he really, a lot of the concepts that he made are stuff that is really foundational, cornerstone of personal computing, and even the internet and networking today. And the people in that time, though, they weren't vocal enough, and that movement got hijacked really by corporations mm-hmm. and big money. And the whole point with Bitcoin is, I'm hoping it's one of these technologies where it's so liberating, and the people behind it who are building it, really feeling it, that it won't be drowned out by people who want to hijack and co-opt Bitcoin.
I hope
so
you're
they're
right.
non-political. I don't sell Bitcoin on saying it's got lower transaction fees or that it's better for corporations. I'm saying I'm not hiding the fact that it's a tool to avoid paying taxes.
Well, you've gotten some heat for that. I've seen threads in Bitcoin Talk Forum where people wish you would not say those kinds of things, but you're just being honest the way I see it.
Yeah, fuck them. I'm not hiding the truth.
Right.
This is what Bitcoin is made from. If anyone tries to cover that up, all you need to do is look in the Genesis block where Satoshi even wrote himself that this is a tool to undermine power from central banks. It's so really disgusting where all around the world people are being abused by a scammy financial system that is ripping people off, and then we have a tool to change it. And what you think that we should become we should allow this amazing tool to become co-opted and corrupted? No way, come on.
And part of lying and covering up about these things has been part of the problem. Now, Amir, I've only got a little bit left on the Skype account, but there's a couple of things I want to ask you, and I want to give you a chance to throw in the last few things. I know, and you've got a lot coming up. One thing, while we're still on this track of co-opting and things like that, what do you think currently is the biggest threat to Bitcoin or just cryptocurrencies in general that we kind of just need to be more aware about, something people need to be talking more about? Do you have any fears of anything like that right now?
There's one guy who says it's strange we praise the corporate attention Bitcoin gets and hate it at the same time, but it's like I'm not hating on people who want to like build infrastructure or services. I think it's great. What is worrying is like if Bitcoin as a tool, if it becomes, there are a number of things that technology is not something you just put out there and it's done. It's a constant struggle to keep it free and open. The internet started off as a project, a very small project in universities around the world, and built off of TCP/IP. But there were people who've been struggling continuously to keep it free and to its ideals. That's what I mean. You know, anybody that wants to participate in Bitcoin has to respect its agenda
and its power.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any threats that you are worried about? Are you worried about government shutting things down? Or are you worried about client dominance?
I hope the government bans Bitcoin, to be honest, because then it would grow in the underground economy.
Yeah.
Okay, the threat that I see is Bitcoin just becomes another tool, like another payments option, like everything else.
Right.
It's built too much in the white market that we end up with a situation where all of the merchants are regulated and they start doing KYC and like logging who's using this Bitcoin address and that Bitcoin address. I'm also worried the standard, if it's controlled too much by one party, like Microsoft, who controlled like every other standard when they had a monopoly on the industry, that it gets too much thrown into it. Because one of the bulwarks against bad changes to Bitcoin right now is that it's open source, and that's great. But we also have to watch out for the deeper issues. And the way to properly develop a standard is to have many different special interest groups who are at odds with each other but have to mutually collaborate to develop the best software. And what's happening right now with Bitcoin is there's one implementation and everything is being thrown into this Bitcoin implementation because people are like, I want this feature, and people are like, let's add it. But what about the other guys in the future who want to come and implement Bitcoin from scratch? We're going to end up with a massive standard that's going to be thousands and thousands of pages long, and you wouldn't be able to develop the Bitcoin implementation without a huge initial investment. And then Bitcoin right now is pretty simple code. It's like 15,000 lines of code. If you're one guy working for 2 years, talented, like a good programmer, then you can do it, you know. But what about the stage where you can't do it because it's such a massive, complex standard with all these different things, with the kitchen sink and everything? That's something we have to guard against. And also just for the health and integrity of the network, you need a diversity of implementations because, inbreeding, one of the risks with inbreeding is that when all the genetic code is the same, that one virus can come and exploit some quirk of that organism's biology to quickly proliferate and ravage a population. But if the population is genetically diverse, it becomes a lot more difficult to exploit some quirk in the whole population.
Do you see other altcoins serving that role?
No, I don't mean altcoins. Yeah. I mean implementation.
You mean, yeah, right.
So, on the web, we have Firefox, Chrome,
right,
Safari, all the different web browsers. And when they're competing together, if there is a fault found, for instance, tomorrow in Safari, it wouldn't take down the web.
Right.
That's what I mean. But if there's a fault found tomorrow in Bitcoin D, that would take down the Bitcoin network.
Yeah. Yeah, especially you were specifically referring to Bitcoin D, which is run on all of the pools and the servers that are involved with Bitcoin transactions.
Exactly. That's a danger. Like, even this 100 blockchain fork wouldn't have happened if we had a diversity of implementations, you know?
Yeah.
And I've been like doing this stuff for a long time and like really stressing on it, but it's sometimes difficult because this is a deep down issue. It's not such a headline grabbing thing. It's not something that people really pay attention to unless they're a developer. And when I'm talking about C++ and I'm talking about system level software, that's a niche part of a niche group.
Yes.
Already.
Yes.
Right? So
yeah.
But
it's hard to get the message about.
I have a whole idea for like infrastructure. I want to create, and I'm trying to work on it, but it's just manpower is my time is limited, and I'm also doing that unsystem.net.
So tell us about this.
Huh?
Tell us about Unsystem in Vienna, right?
Oh, yeah, it's cool. We have so I have this venue, which is normally like for 20,000 people, and I'm going to like fill it for a weekend. It's right next to the International Atomic Energy Agency and right next to the United Nations, and I'm going to fill it for a weekend with all kinds of like hackers, anarchists, squatters, and other kinds of subversives. Like, we have really cool people there if you go. And it's like going into the den of the dragon while the dragon's sleeping, taking a piss quietly in the corner, and then leaving. Like a statement. But also, like, I want to show Bitcoin. I think the problem with Bitcoin right now is that like a lot of presentation is very much focused around this is what Bitcoin is, blah, 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 facts, info. We need to show Bitcoin as a cultural movement. You know, there's all these things emerging now, like Occupy, the Anonymous, you know, the 3D printing. This is the start of a new culture. This is something new emerging out of that. Mm-hmm. You know, it's still not defined what it is. It's still growing, but
and it's worldwide.
Bitcoin is a big piece of that.
Yeah.
And we need to get these people, like all these people who are into this stuff, like bring them in the place, like these young kids, and show them like the real stuff that's happening, like the real things underneath, show them the real developments. And it's really important, young people, because these are the people who haven't yet been, who aren't yet, you know, in a job, haven't yet got a family. They're more willing to explore and jump off the deep end, you know. They're more willing to take risks, you know, and that's a really powerful thing for the movement as a whole.
Well, and the timing,
and
I mean, I just heard
a
statistic. There's 300 million young adults unemployed around the world. And there's a system now that has sort of disenfranchised a huge, massive population, and there is sort of a call for something like this right now. So it's come at a right time. Yeah,
and I think open source is like one of the most important things for society that's happened in ages. Like, people don't realize how amazing this is. You have people all around the world, professional people, writing this stuff, like giving it out there for free. Anyone can take it, make changes to it, and release those for free. And it's billions of dollars worth of code that's being created, and it's revolutionized the computer industry. A lot of Android phones are Linux-based. Apple systems are based off open source. This is real. This is not something fake. And people talk about post-scarcity economy in the future, but we have one here now working. The open source movement, open source software. It's so important. I really wish people would like pay more attention to it. When I got into this stuff when I was 16, I was constantly saying to myself, wow, it's incredible. Why is the media not talking about it? Why is it not on Hollywood all the time, constantly? It's the most amazing thing ever. At least now, like, I think the press and stuff is starting to pay more attention. Bitcoin is really cool.
Yeah.
It's open source.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I really, that's one thing I like about Bitcoin too, open source software.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. So I've only got a couple of minutes left on the Skype before it's going to probably automate.
Cool.
I don't know what happens.
Talk about the other Libbitcoin things then as well.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I was talking about having this full node, which you can interact with the blockchain, and you can also like make an adapter for that, so that Electrum, so that it translates the queries that you make against that to the ones that Electrum clients use. So now you can just bolt on Electrum clients as well. So that's pretty cool. And then so I was talking about like the C++ API being being like really basic, like as in like like when you use like X11 programming, it's really sometimes difficult to use because it doesn't try and abstract any of the functionality that it provides. But then in the Python library, so like when I've got this server running and you're interacting with it, the way the client side part of that is a Python library, and that's like really like making it simple to use. So you can do like blockchain.blocks and then the block number, and then you could do .outputs. You can check the spend of an output.
Oh.
You can find the address associated with an output. Like using, like the Django or SQL Alchemy ORM. It's like using that kind of syntax.
Yeah.
That you can like really like navigate the blockchain.
So people are going to build all kinds of data analytics tools around that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's really nice. I like this kind of things.
Yeah. And then sites like blockchain.info will owe their ability to show awesome stats to you.
Yeah, well, I was just talking with the guy today, and he was saying, I need some small things like this, and I was saying, I can make use of some API and tools, and so we're collaborating that way, but let's see. And then also Debian has said that they will package it, which would be really nice. It would be much easier to deploy this software
out there.
Awesome. And I've been working a lot on the documentation because I've been like mostly programming it for all this time, but now I'm actually focusing on the documentation.
You've actually been working. You've been working on it for about 2 years, Libbitcoin. So it's in a pretty good state. It's just now it needs the doc so that way people can wrap their brain around it. Yeah, that's
exactly.
Awesome. Well, Amir, I would love to have a chance to chat with you down the road just to catch up and see where things are at and how it's going.
Cool stuff.
I know it's late where you're at, so I appreciate you staying up late to come on the show with us.
I'm up. This is my midday.
Of course. Okay. All right. Well, very good, sir. Thank you very much. And we'll have links to everything you mentioned in our show notes. So if you want to send people to jupiterbroadcasting.com, look for Plan B Episode 7, and we'll have a section with all your links in there. People can go find his GitHub where he has Libbitcoin and also links to all the other things he mentioned, as well as that YouTube talk. So, Amir, thanks very much for coming on the show. Now, of course, you can always send your questions into planb@jupiterbroadcasting.com or hit our contact link at the top of our website. Or start a thread in our subreddit over at planbshow.reddit.com. And Drew and I get a lot of questions throughout the week, and sometimes we don't get a chance to answer all of them, but we kind of feel like every now and then there's some basics we should cover just to help people who are listening to the show get their feet, kind of get things started. So, Drew, our first email this week comes in from Mitchell, and he says, "Hi, Chris and Drew. I've recently started mining Bitcoins, and the wallet I'm currently using is Electrum. Next to every transaction is a tick to say the transaction has been confirmed. If you hover your mouse over the tick, it shows you how many confirmations the transaction had. On one transaction for 0.01 no, I'm kidding, Bitcoins, there are 365 confirmations, and for another transaction, there are 230 confirmations for a transaction of only 0.23 Bitcoins. Is there any reason that there were more confirmations for a cheaper transactions? And postscript, if I'm building and starting mining a rig for mining Litecoins, what's a good graphics card for under $100? Thanks, guys. Love your initiative to do a podcast on Bitcoins. Keep up the good work. And any donations appreciated for his Bitcoin." I like that. He's putting a plea out there. Well, it's on the screen. People can grab it. Drew, what do you think about... so Mitchell's got a couple questions here. He's got one question about different confirmation amounts, even for a cheaper transaction. He's got a question about a video card. What do you think?
And about the confirmations, that's something that I don't really know. I've been scouring the Bitcoin wiki, and I assume that at least the transaction fees are equal between the transactions of those differing amounts, and that he made them at the same time, neither of which was specified, but I assume that to be the case.
That could be a key difference, though, if you sent them from different clients or had different fee settings.
But, I mean, I've seen there's something on the Bitcoin Reddit, too, where somebody had sent a transaction, but it hadn't been getting many, if at all, or it hasn't been getting any confirmations because transactions that the funds are based upon for them being at your address have yet to be confirmed or something like that. So maybe that has something to do with it, past confirmations. I'm not really sure. So if somebody has a good answer, because I haven't found one, send us an email.
Yeah, or even better, if they would be so kind, call us 1-352-58-PLAN-B and leave us a voicemail. We also have that number in the show notes. I wonder if... yeah, because I've always, once I go beyond 3 or 4 confirmations, I pretty much just stop checking.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So like Lewis is saying in the chat room, the older a transaction is, the more time it has been on the network. So therefore, the more time it has been confirmed by the miners. So it can have more confirmations just if it is an older transaction.
Right. Yeah. The funds from his transaction are older.
So I'm not sure if he spent them in what order, but yeah, I have seen that where there's sometimes just, different transaction amounts. But as long as you got a couple, you're fine. That's what I say. That's what BitInstant says, at least. All right. Yeah. Next email comes in from Eugene. He says, "Hey, guys, you've probably gotten a billion emails like this today, but just in case you didn't, please do the Bitcoin community a favor and don't call it terrorist money anymore." Well, so I don't really trust Bitcoin any more than USD. There are too many variables that come into play to make it a safe alternative to USD. Viruses, security breaches, and hardware failures can all leave you penniless. I don't think the powers that be will allow us to use Bitcoin. They want us to use their money that can either print more of or enter a few digits in the right database spreadsheet and create them. This is really a big bummer because I was hoping that Bitcoin would take off and gain widespread adoption. Oh well, I suppose it's in the near future. Mt. Gox is going to get a different service to transfer their money in and out.
It seems like, Bitcoin to me is getting a lot of traction and a lot of attention. So I don't know about that last part.
It's never been more traction or more attention ever.
That's why I was kind of confused because it sure seems to me that, at least in the media coverage, it's going crazy in the last few months at least. So.
I think.
But
well, you know what it is, man, is I think this Mt. Gox situation has people down. So, for people who are maybe caught last week's episode and maybe haven't followed the news in the meantime, when last week's episode went on the air, it was breaking that something was going on between DHS and Mt. Gox. We didn't quite know what because there hadn't been any articles written on it yet. This was all just what we were hearing from our audience, what we were seeing in forum posts, and we knew something was up. And we thought, well, we're going to see a big crash from this because at the time, it sounded like it was a very significant, Mt. Gox, was getting attacked by the DHS. It turned out to be not quite so dramatic, but I actually think it's a bigger deal than the overall Bitcoin community has quite realized. It's once again Mt. Gox putting a stain on the Bitcoin community by their utter and complete incompetence to do even the most basic functions of their business correct. And this comes down on the shoulders of the CEO of Mt. Gox, Mark Karpeles, or however you say his last name, who's cited in the documents that the United States government is going after them with by name because of the shell corporation that he set up, Mutum Siglum LLC, whatever it was, that was an American shell subsidiary that they had. And what they essentially tried to do was break out the exchange side of their business and the money payments side of their business, thinking, well, look at us, we're clever, we've split it, the United States government will never figure it out, and so we don't have to say this money is being used for an exchange. So we're not going to fill that stuff out on the forum because this is just a shell company, it's our money company, they'll never figure it out. And you know what? They figured it out. And
their budgets are going crazy. They got plenty of money to look into this, and it's a huge threat to the infrastructure, or to the banking system. So the government's very concerned with anything that threats the bank, or a threat for the banking system as a whole.
And the immediate effect has been payments via and withdrawals via Dawala are shut down. And so the Bitcoin community's been like, yeah, okay, no bigs.
Yeah,
although
Eugene
seems to be quite upset about it.
Yeah, it's definitely turned him around. But because I expected to see a big crash, but the price was pretty. It went a little weird, but the last couple of things that we've seen, like all the DDoSes recently, and these legal issues and regulatory issues. We're not seeing a real crisis. We're not really seeing people panic. So.
I think okay. First of all, we keep hearing stories about VC funding, and then you combine that with the Bitcoin conference that happened, where there was a lot of. The price just started going up over the weekend. You know what I mean, right there. That's a sign. But I think the big problem is the DHS is going after Mark. So what happens when you cut the head off of Mt. Gox? Does Mt. Gox just continue on just fine? Do they spiral out of control? What happens when you cut the head off? Because they are going for the head of Mt. Gox. I believe the DHS wants to make an example out of Mark.
They would. I would definitely think that they would like to do that very much.
And I think once this story starts to play out, I wouldn't be surprised if then we start to see an impact in the price of the market. Because right now they're still responsible for 80% of the transactions or of the trades. And we don't have anything on the horizon right now to fix it, to replace it. There's no, yes, there's plenty of other exchanges, and we just got an email from somebody who's working on one that looks pretty straightforward right now. But none of them even compare in volume, and secondarily, they don't have the trust, and they're all centralized as well. So they suffer from some of the same systemic problems that Mt. Gox suffers from.
Yeah, and also Canada, their regulatory agency that has the same jurisdiction that the DHS has in the U.S. here, explicitly stated that they don't regard Bitcoin exchanges as money transmitters. So that's some recent news. Yeah. So that you might see some of these exchanges, at least to some degree, or maybe new ones pop up. Because I mean, what you need with the regulation stuff is to be very, very clear about how things are. And the U.S. thing, the regulatory thing with, I forgot what the agency was, not the DHS, but this was before. But they had come out and said that Bitcoin, they're only going to regulate the money transmitters themselves. But even the Canadians are not even saying that at all. So we might see some competition.
Good.
From that part of the world.
Good.
To help us out.
Good. And then you have folks like Trade Hill and BitInstant who appear to be trying to go the absolute legitimate route. The part where Mark really is screwed is there's even Bitcoin talk threads where Mark says, we might need to get licenses in every state in order to do what we're doing.
Oh, slap your knee. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, right. And then you also wonder, how does this play into that whole? Was it CoinLab that it was? Was it Remember the lawsuit between Mt. Gox and I know Ben mentioned CoinLab was a VC. I thought it was. Anyways, I wonder if that was also them trying to avoid this problem, because Mt. Gox knew that their funding solutions for the United States were built on a house of cards.
Hey.
And so they knew they needed to maybe partner with an American company.
I see. Yeah.
But I wonder if they had done that. I wonder if they had gone through with that and they had transferred everybody's funds, and it was if it was an American institution, the DHS would have had even more leverage over them.
Oh yeah, that would have been a kind of freaky thing if Gox was actually hosted out of here, because they're pretty trigger happy about taking down sites.
Yeah, it was CoinLab. It was CoinLab that is suing Mt. Gox for $75 million because they were supposed to take over all of Mt. Gox's American business. Now, I remember on this very show, I was like, why is Mt. Gox in the position of power giving all of this business to somebody else? I think this was why.
Yeah, a week or two ago, we were talking about that. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. This has to be why, because, I mean, they're on pretty shaky ground. I guess it was just a matter of time.
And they maybe knew it. I mean, of course they knew it. Mark knew it because Mark signed the papers himself. He knew he lied. He knew he was kind of getting away on a technicality. That's what it was. It was a technicality.
Yeah, and the language of it was pretty explicit.
And they were too, even at the numbers they were doing, it was just still too little for them to care about, for the government to care about. But now they're starting to take another look at it, which maybe tells you, a little insight into how they feel about Bitcoin right now.
It sure seems like they were unnecessarily complacent given their position that they had gained, early in the evolution of the Bitcoin economy.
Has that not seemed like the case every time you found something about Mt. Gox out? Like when we discovered that when they were having the horrible lag problems, that their engine could only do 7 transactions at a time. And it's like, wait a minute, you guys knew about this limitation? Well, yeah, we were totally just going to build the new engine, but it's taken super long time. Well, guess what? That rooster came home to roost or whatever. What is that saying? That tornado came home to... No, I shouldn't make a tornado joke. But you get, like, every time you hear about a big Mt. Gox controversy, and when you boil it down, it's like, oh, so this was kind of incompetence.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of that going around. So
this is why I say Canada. They are a stain on the community. They're a stain on Bitcoin's legitimacy, because they are such a bunch of cock-ups themselves. They are an embarrassment. And people when I watch like financial, there's podcasts that some financial advisors do where they get on and they just talk money stuff. And when Bitcoin comes up, they laugh about Mt. Gox, and they laugh that the majority of our trades, like, it's funny, and they refer to it as, the Magic the Gathering exchange that is run by Magical Tucks, and they think it's really funny. Like it's like a laughable thing. They look at these kids with their toys.
And it is kind of the face of Bitcoin, because I mean, there is never a discussion, at least I don't think in the mainstream media, where the price is the Mt. Gox price.
Yeah.
It's not the price of Bitcoin in and of itself. It's their price.
Right. And, this goes back to something that Max Kaiser got super flamed for, because it sounded like he was missing some of the fundamentals of Bitcoin, whereas he was saying the price should be set by the Bitcoin Foundation. Now, how would that ever actually be accomplished? I don't know, but we've essentially done it with Mt. Gox, so maybe it could be done with the Bitcoin Foundation. I think the blowback, if you recall, was that would require some centralization, and people sort of erupted and sort of going.
Yeah, that ain't going to happen.
Going against the very nature of Bitcoin. But I think maybe his overall point was that we need to take it out of the hands of the kids.
Yeah, I mean, he has a point there for having the fear of keeping it at least over there. But I mean, the cool thing about all this competition and stuff is we're gonna hopefully we'll see Mt. Gox marginalized,
right, and
and have like a wider distribution, multiple points of failure, more stuff like that. So stuff isn't so volatile. Stuff isn't so affected by any of these crazy instances of multiple cases of this incompetency.
If I could just like have my way, Chris's way would be there's a lot of stuff in the works right now. Buttercoin is an open source exchange, but it's centralized again. But there's a lot of stuff in the works right now. I would love to be at the point where we have a really, solid, getting super close. Maybe people are already kind of using it to some high volume level, decentralized exchange system that's been developed. Something that is designed for Bitcoin. I'm not talking about Ripple. I'm talking about something I know Ripple supports Bitcoin. I'm talking about something that's designed specifically for the Bitcoin network, uses the Bitcoin network. I wish it was already in place, and then I wish Mt. Gox would implode, because I think we would have a very smooth switchover. But right now, while Bitcoin's doing awesome and people are excited, if Mt. Gox completely blows up because of something going down with Mark or whatever, and I know that's totally worst case scenario, but if it happens, there's nothing really in the place to fill that void that won't completely collapse under traffic.
True, yep.
And doesn't really suffer from potentially the same issues at this point.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully nothing. Hopefully the Mt. Gox situation isn't a big deal, and the fact that they're in Tokyo hopefully will insulate them a little bit and draw things out and give us time, and maybe that'll be the far under developers' arses to get this problem solved. All right, next email. Thanks, Eugene. Good email. Next email comes in from Nigel. Hey, guys. Found a cool site, dustcoin.com, which compares lots of crypto coin informations. It's amazing how many cryptocurrencies there are now. Love the show. Keep up the great work. So this Dustcoin is really cool. It's simple. And did you see it? Did you take it?
Yeah, I checked it out.
Yeah, I'm going to go there right now. So it's dustcoin.com. And I thought he meant like just loose Bitcoin change, but no, it's like all the different cryptocurrencies. Get ready to take a drink, everybody. Litecoin, Namecoin, Peepeecoin, Feathercoin, Novacoin, Firecoin, everything. Barbecue coins on here even.
China coin. Oh, look at that.
And it works on the smart device as well. I've tried it. And you can plug in different hash rates and power stuff and do calculations. It's pretty cool. It's dustcoin.com. So thanks, Nigel, for sending that in to us. All right, Mr. Drew, our next email comes in from Mark. He says, hi, Chris and Drew. Well, hi, Mark. Thanks for emailing us. I've been hearing a lot of conversations between people, and the word Bitcoin keeps grabbing my attention. The conversations are about Scotland using cryptocurrency when we get independence. To me, and a few Bitcoin users I know, think this sounds interesting. I can't help feel that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are mature enough to act as a currency for an entire country, especially when people would want to come into effect before 18.9.14. In my opinion, that sounds like an extremely unrealistic target. I love the show, and I feel a lot more informed about Bitcoin, and I do hope that cryptocurrency becomes our default currency in time, and I hope people give enough time to mature. I think he typoed. I think he meant to say, I can't help but feel that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are not mature enough to act as a currency for an entire country.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I would agree with Mark. In fact, through the life of the show, Drew, I've bounced back and forth if we should ever even consider Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies used outside the net, off the internet, offline. At first I kind of thought, it's just not what they're made for. This just doesn't make any sense. And then after Kashmir Hill did it, and I started thinking about it a little more, I was like, actually, and Gift kind of made it a little more real. The Gift app kind of made it a little more real, and I thought, actually, it does actually work pretty damn good in physical, as long as you have internet connectivity.
Right.
But as Ron Paul says, if I can't put a few coins in my pocket, I don't know if I want it as my in-person currency.
Yeah, he kind of has a point, but I mean, the reason I chose this one is I just don't understand why a country has to have a single currency. Like, I get, the U.S. has a dollar and all that, and all these countries have their own individual currencies for their country, but I don't see a reason to not have currency competition. Because what if there's something that comes out that's better than Bitcoin? What if there's something?
So you mean you don't see why a country can't have multiple currencies?
Yeah, I like the idea of currency competition, because you don't have to have anything, you don't have the government deem something to be unnecessary for use. Like, I mean, if you go to pay your taxes at the end of the year, they give you a couple options. And
you are a libertarian. I'll tell you what, there's no government in the world that is probably actually likes that idea. Even the governments like ours that say in principle they think it's a good idea, I don't think actually like it, because it is a huge source of control for the economy, for the populace, for business. I mean, you can't give that up. That's
definitely.
root access,
they
man.
Do not. Yeah, definitely do not want to give that up at all. But I mean, I think Bitcoin is at least increasing the level of competition and getting a lot of people to think about their currencies relative to it. It's just odd that we want to force. Well, not he wasn't implying force, but countries want to enforce the rules where you have to use this currency or that currency. Then they can do whatever they want with the supply and all that crap. But
yeah.
I like competition in all realms. I like you can buy multiple phones, you can buy different types of computers. Yeah. The competition has really helped spur society. Just like if you look at the 1700s to now, the level of the emergence of competition in private property and all that stuff, and here we are with this amazing technology. I mean, if we just extend competition in every realm possible, at least, especially with currencies, I think we'll see a great deal of benefit. People will choose the best thing.
At first, I thought you were saying you don't understand why each country needs to have their own individual currency. Why can't we all just have one currency? And I thought, you're crazy, but you're not too crazy when it comes to the internet. And see, this is why I always thought Bitcoin only made sense online, because the internet sort of screams for a common payment system. And something that overcomes fundamentally an aspect of the internet is two people can be doing a transaction and have no idea if they can trust each other, but the crypto-based currencies solve that problem, right? I know I've got my payment from you, I've got that unique number from you, and I have it now, it's mine, you've paid me. It doesn't matter if you are who you say you are. I've got those numbers in my wallet now. And the internet desperately needs something like that almost turns money into TCP/IP type stuff, where it can be plumbing for the internet. It's money plumbing for the internet.
Yeah, it's got its own hose through. Yeah, its own pipe.
Yeah,
the internet.
And that's why I always thought that's really its purpose. And then when I go to my local store, I'm going to pay in cash. I'm going to pay in my government controlled currency, and we'll just have two worlds. We'll have the government world that in the real world where everything is controlled, and then we'll have the internet world where we have Silk Road and we have services online that you can buy stuff in Bitcoin, like the bitcoinstore.com and Coinbase and all these different, we'll have all that stuff, right? And the two things shall never meet. And now that I think about it, that is really silly, because there's this inherent benefit to being able to buy Bitcoins here in Washington State of the United States of America, get on a plane, fly down to Australia, and buy a candy bar with Bitcoin. You're
making borders irrelevant. You're making countries irrelevant.
Just like they're irrelevant on the internet.
It makes all this stuff irrelevant.
But it doesn't necessarily mean they can't also have a local currency there. I mean, technology solves that problem. I mean, back when it was old hand-cranked tills and you punched in the certain code and it opened up the till, cha-ching, it made sense why you wouldn't want to have a bunch of different currencies. But now that the majority of point-of-sale devices are basically computers or iPads, they can handle multiple types of currencies. It doesn't matter. The computers do the math. The computers do the conversion. Use whatever you want.
Exactly. More choice for you to choose however you want to conduct your life.
I think if Bitcoin got to the point where it was as common as a form of payment as MasterCard or Visa, that would be a fundamental win for Bitcoin. And it could achieve that without having to disrupt or displace the US dollar or the euro or anything like that.
Yep.
I think you could still have that. You could still achieve that.
Yep, competition with, stuff that I don't like. I don't like, the whole Federal Reserve System and U.S. monetary policy. But, you got to use it. It's not, and you got Bitcoins over here, you got dollars over here. They both serve their own needs. The competition is good.
Yeah, it really is, because the current system is pretty much as rigged against the common person as possible when it comes to the monetary system. The way the banks are designed, everything like that is, they're legalized criminals. They literally get away with drug trafficking and embezzlement, and they get slapped on the wrist. And then they get to print money at nearly absolutely zero interest, because the central banks are controlled by a small. No, they're controlled by a small group. And they don't necessarily have the interests of the big group in mind. And Bitcoin is sort of an opportunity for the people. It's the people's currency. And as ridiculous and as much as hyperbole as that sounds like, Bitcoin is an opportunity for the people to start again and create their own wealth. It is literally allowing people to create their own wealth in the open market however they see fit, either as an early adopter in Bitcoin mining, just like early adopters in gold were rewarded in having gold.
Significantly.
Right. And
the price is always going.
And the discovery of gold, it's very interesting. It's very interesting to watch the discovery of gold and how that made a lot of poor people rich and made a lot of rich people even richer, just like Bitcoin is going to do.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Well, you're not, with the Federal Reserve System and implicit inflation, inflation of the money supply, you're forcing everybody is required essentially, if you want to maintain the value of what you've earned, what you've traded for your time and energy, your property, your money, your dollars, they're forcing you to essentially invest that and gamble it in the stock market. Who gets their money from their employer and puts it in the puts it in a bank in a savings account, and then waits 50 years and pulls it out? You are required to go gamble it. You have to.
Well, so right now, the way the system is set up, and of course, I'm not an economy guy, and you guys can go do your own research if this piques your interest, but the way the system is set up right now, you're penalized for saving. And the reason why you're penalized for saving is because those D-bags in Washington are printing to the tune of a minimum of like 80. What is the amount they're buying in the mortgage-backed securities every single month? Chat room, is it 80 billion? Is that number right? Every single damn month, they're just
like
buying
30 to
up
80. Yeah. And people don't really understand that this money that they're purchasing these bonds for, this money is being traded to the government in exchange for bonds. And this money, they didn't just pull it out of a bank. Like they just generated it and they created it and they handed it over to the federal government.
So it is devaluing the dollar that is sitting in the savings account, whereas Bitcoin is as currently experiencing the exact opposite. It rewards you for saving. It rewards you for being smart with your money. It rewards you also for gambling if you so choose to gamble in the right aspect. In this case, it'd be more like gambling in creating infrastructure and marketplace and economy, not necessarily gambling like Satoshi Tice.
And creating jobs.
Yeah. So I find it to be a very interesting sort of I don't know if it's a society, but it's like this. If it's able to achieve some sort of mainstream adoption, it's going to enable a huge amount of a repressed population over time. So it's a really big deal if it gets popular. And if it's unsuccessful, it seems like even if it doesn't get to the point where it's changing the eco-socionomical situation in countries, it at minimum will still be around and used as a drug trade money. So it seems like at some level Bitcoin almost has a built-in success or something almost identical to it. You know what I mean? It's almost like it can't fail.
Yeah, its nature kind of almost guarantees, at least to some degree, that it'll continue to exist and be used, right? Right,
because it's the fundamental service and function that it provides is just sort of required by the world we live in now. And actually, speaking of the banks and Silk Road, Max Kaiser was on a podcast out of London, the London Reel, that's what it was. And of course, Max Kaiser, the host of Russia's Today's Kaiser Report, he went on there to talk about Bitcoin, talked about the Federal Reserve, and it was like a 45-minute, 50-minute interview chat that he did. Pretty interesting stuff. Some good insight into how Max thinks about some of these things. He's a pretty smart guy. And he talked a little bit, they brought up Silk Road. And since we just covered Silk Road last week, you and I have been talking about it right now, Max's take on Silk Road I thought was interesting. I thought I'd play this excerpt from the interview, and then I'll link the full thing in the show notes.
Silk Road, Bitcoin, buying drugs. Okay, let's see. Well, let's talk about HSBC. Okay. There's a bank.
They take drugs?
They were caught laundering $8 billion of Mexican drug cartel money.
Yeah.
They don't deny it. They paid maybe a little fine. 60,000 dead Mexicans, war on drugs because of money laundering, thanks to HSBC. Mexicans with their heads cut off rolling down the street because of HSBC, one of the biggest money laundering outfits and drug
and the drug demand
supporters in the world. Okay, so are they the biggest? No, there's one even bigger. It's called Wachovia Bank. They were caught laundering $400 billion in Mexican drug money. They were bought by Wells Fargo, which is now their biggest shareholder, is Warren Buffett. At Warren Buffett's annual meeting where he's playing little ukulele, singing about Charlie Munger's cock he's got in his mouth. Did he happen to say, "Oh, I just bought Wells Fargo. They laundered lots of drug money. Mexicans are dead. Happy me, I'm Warren. Happy Warren, happy Warren. I kill Mexicans." No, he didn't say that, did he?
No.
But he's complicit He's complicit in their murder.
Okay.
He's complicit in the gun running that goes between America and Mexico. He's a terrorist, and I don't use that term loosely. Warren Buffett is a financial terrorist. George Osborne is a financial terrorist. The heads of Bank of America, HSBC, Barclays, Lloyds, Royal Bank of Scotland, they are financial terrorists. The fact that George Osborne allows terrorism right here in London, unchecked, just running amok in the city, is unconscionable. It's tyranny. The people in this country should be outraged, and they should do what they have to do to restore justice in whatever means necessary.
Which is what?
I leave it up to their imagination.
Okay. So your point is the Silk Road is a tiny little speck of the drug
It's fly
trade.
shit in the pepper.
Okay.
It's meaningless. And besides, every technology is supported by drugs and sex. Even the Bible starts out with a pornographic story about Adam and Eve. Every single technology, the VCR, the videotape, the DVD, the CD, it all starts with sex, porno, and drugs. Rock and roll is all about sex and drugs. This is the beginning of everything.
It's the beginning of everything.
He's just getting warmed up. I cut him off right there. I was like, all right, that's enough, Max. Thank you very much. But kind of makes a point.
That's a great point. That's a lot of money that's going into these nefarious acts.
Yeah, you want to talk about currencies that are backed by drugs, ladies and gentlemen. I introduce you to the United States dollar.
The world reserve currency of drugs.
What do you think about his point that a lot of really critical technologies have been sort of pioneered by either the facilitating of drugs or the distribution of porn?
I think he's. I mean, I agree with that, and that goes to what we were talking about. How the drug market has at least some kind of baseline, as a point where Bitcoin cannot fall, further beyond. And I lost my train of thought, but
about how Silk Road sort of is as a sort of a foundation trade.
Yeah, a foundation point for the for the continued existence.
Yeah, and all right, now we're done. I know chat room's getting on our case because we're talking about Silk Road again. Commenters got all pissed off that we talked about Silk Road. First rule of Fight Club, all that crap. All right, we're done. Because it's a podcast and we have the flexibility of continuing to talk about a topic once it's been brought up instead of just talking about it once and then moving on and never mentioning it again like the mainstream media does. We have that flexibility, so I wanted to leverage that to just sort of button up that discussion. And now we have done so, Mr. Drew, and I think having done so brings us to the end of this week's show. So don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, you can watch us live Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. GMT, and hang out in our awesome chat room. Thank you guys very much for hanging out with us this week. We really appreciate it. Go over to our subreddit, planbshow.reddit.com, and get in there. We get some activity in there. I have some great ideas, but we need some people in there. Drew, man, thanks for a great show.
Yeah, thanks.
And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this week's episode of Plan B. We'll see you right back here next week.